On today's episode, could Zayne Parekh be in the mix for the Blackhawks at number 2? I'll answer that, and we'll get into Lukas Reichel's report card.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Just a reminder to everyone watching on YouTube right now, hit that like button, comment down below as well as to your thoughts on Zayne Parekh, whether you think the Blackhawks should be considering him with the second overall selection, and also the grade that you would give Lukas Reichel based on his performance this season. Go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks. Also, if you haven't done so already, I'm going to be going over numerous 2024 NHL draft prospects here leading up to this year's draft. In a couple weeks' time, I'll also be dropping my Blackhawks top 10 prospects list. There's going to be lots of stuff going on this summer that you're not going to want to miss out on. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Last but certainly not least, got to let you all know, today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Make sure to go and download the Game Time app right now. And when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKDOWNNHL in all caps to get $20 off to sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Another day, another 2024 NHL Draft Profile to get into. I've already covered notable prospects such as Ivan Demidov, Artem Levshinov, Caden Lindstrom, and most recently Cole Yzerman on Wednesday's episode. Make sure to go and check out those shows if you haven't done so already. They're all neatly sorted in the 2024 NHL Draft Profile playlist on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. Everything is also time-coded in the description to make everything easy for you, so make sure to go and check those out. Today, though, I'm going to be covering a right-handed defenseman for the second time since getting into these draft profiles. The man we're going to be getting into today is none other than Zayne Parekh, a man whose draft stock has been on quite a rise over the last 6, 7, 8 months, having just a real big-time season in the OHL. And as I kind of talked about with Cole Yzerman, his draft stock maybe didn't take that leap like some folks were expecting, but also a reason why there is a belief that he could fall is because a lot of guys like a Zayne Parekh just really capitalized on their opportunity, showed progress, showed developments, and really have their draft stocks moving in the right direction. Perekh is absolutely one of those guys and could lead to someone like a Cole Yzerman, a Berkeley Catton, falling a little bit down in the first round. So Zayne Parekh, a really, really intriguing prospect. Getting into his draft profile here, he's a 6 foot, 180-pound right-handed defenseman. Decent height, about average, but definitely needs to get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. Turned 18 back in February, so not old, not young in this year's draft class, kind of middle of the board. But boy, did he have a big-time year, like I mentioned. 96 points in 66 OHL games for the Saginaw Spirit. 33 of those 96 points were goals, Blackhawks fans. You heard me right. 33 goals out of Zayne Parekh this season. And he was already a notable goal scorer going into this year because the year before, his first in the OHL with Saginaw, he potted 21 goals, and that was the most ever by a U17 defenseman in the OHL. Came back and absolutely blew that number out of the water, setting another record in the OHL with 33 goals. And oh yeah, chipped in with 63 assists in those 66 games as well, giving him a 1.5 point per game margin, which is the second highest of all draft-eligible defensemen in the OHL over the last 25 years. The only man with a higher marker than Zayne Parekh is Ryan Ellis. He's got a better marker than many notable high first-round selections. I mean, Cam Fowler, Jamie Drysdale, Evan Bouchard, Tony DeAngelo, Drew Doughty even, like guys that were really sought-after prospects in their draft classes. Zayne Parekh, in terms of a point per game margin, was better than all of them offensively in his draft eligible year. But there are some concerns about the defensive side of things when the puck isn't on his stick. That's going to make for a really curious conversation as to where exactly Zayne Parekh is going to go. As far as the rankings, kind of all over the place here. He's rated 5th by Elite Prospects, 9th by Bob McKenzie, a little bit of an older ranking there, 3rd by Craig Button, that's his highest ranking, and then 17th by Tony Ferrari, that's his lowest ranking, followed by 10th from McKean's Hockey, 12th from Chris Peters, 8th from Daily Faceoffs, and 6th from Dobber Prospects. Getting into Perekh's strengths and weaknesses, first things first for his strengths, it's just basically all of the offensive abilities. He is absolutely an offensive-minded defenseman who shoots the puck. Shooting the puck is what we have to talk about first with a guy who just scored 33 goals from the blue line this past season. And when we're talking about Perekh's goal-scoring abilities, it's really done by pinpoint accuracy. I don't think he has like a booming shot from the blue line. It's more so about where he's able to place these shots. Pinpoint accuracy, like I said, if you go and watch his highlight tape, a lot of goals were scored by him getting the puck through traffic and finding that top corner. Some of the best accuracy that I've seen from a 17, 18-year-old defenseman, just does a really remarkable job of getting not only pucks on net, but finding the exact spot that he was trying to pinpoint. It's really remarkable how many of his goals were scored in that variety this season. And just pairs that, like I said, with a really sound playmaking ability. 63 points in 66 games this year. Can quarterback a power play, and I think because he has that goal-scoring presence, defenders are just going to always kind of be drawn by that, which is going to open up passing lanes. Perekh does a good job of recognizing that, makes really good seam passes on the power play, has good breakout passes, and he also has really strong puck handling abilities as well. He's not very easy to knock off the puck, even though, as I mentioned, his size doesn't really jump off the charts or anything, but he has that ability to bounce off of defenders. And then also, it always feels like the puck is glued to his blade. Not many times did you see him going and dancing and weaving through traffic, and they're able to knock the puck away from him. Now, that's going to be obviously a bigger challenge at the next level, but from what we see out of a 17, 18-year-old kid, really strong puck control. And like I said, it's like it's glued to his tape at all times. He's able to dazzle you a little bit, and I think that's going to help his puck carrying abilities at the next level as well. As far as the skating, pretty good skater, really solid edge work that helps him turn directions in a hurry. He can get up ice and dazzle around defenders because he's shifty out there and because he has that puck handling, right? Pairs that with really good edge work that helps him change directions and kind of open up some space for himself to give him another second to read the play and make the correct read out there. So he's got a really good all-in-all offensive makeup, and I think that really works well for him in the cycle too, which is going to be attractive to NHL clubs because the way he's able to shift and turn in a hurry and also cycle around in the offensive zone and kind of jump down low to go activate on the play. He's already able to do all of that stuff. And like I said, pairs it with a really good goal scoring ability too. So all the offensive attributes, Zayne Parekh really has them. They're all basically strengths of his game. As far as weaknesses, there's kind of a lot here too. First, he's not really a super physical defender. I think that's a little bit obvious being that he's only 180 pounds at 6 foot, but because of that and also the way he thinks the game too, right? He is an offensive-minded defenseman, true and true, and sometimes that can get him into trouble. Like he can pinch at bad times and give up an odd man break going the other way. Sometimes he forces passes a little bit too much, trying to squeeze something in that probably wasn't there. His reads and decision-making all in all isn't splendid. It's not terrific. There's a little bit more to be desired in that department. And also, I talked about his edge work. He doesn't really have like that great blow past you speed. And when I referenced his puck handling, helping him be a puck carrier at the NHL level and being a transition guy, I do worry that because of the style that he plays, his speed may prevent him from getting back. And I just feel like Zayne Parekh, to me, it feels like he's a guy who will shine if he has a really reliable defensive partner next to him. I just have some questions about whether he can be the anchor of his own pairing. I did think, he got better on the defensive side of things this year, but, the coverage, the amount of turnovers, the lack of physical presence, it is something to think about. And I do wonder how much NHL clubs are going to weigh that compared to all the offensive, beautiful things that Zayne Parekh provides. And it just, I kind of get a vibe that, especially when the first right-handed defenseman that I covered was Artem Levshinov, he plays like a grown man. I don't necessarily know if Zayne Parekh plays like a grown man. So defensively, the consistency in all areas, kind of rounding out his game there, definitely needs work. As far as a projection here for Perekh, I do think he's going to be a top 4 offensive defenseman in this league, but probably only a top pairing guy, like I said, if he has that really good left-handed defensive defenseman alongside him. I do think, though, that he could run a power play, absolutely, and I think his attributes, like, I could see him being a consistent 10 goal scorer in the NHL with, 40 to 50, 55 point upside, but I don't know. There have been kind of some Erik Karlsson comparisons. I just don't see it with the lack of top end speed out of Zayne Parekh. He's not the biggest guy. He doesn't really blow by you. I think he's going to be a good offensive defenseman, but I just don't know if he's going to be that true clear cut number one because there are some deficiencies in his game. I do ultimately think because of that, he winds up going after Artem Levshinov, but the offensive abilities, they're so prevalent. I would be shocked if someone doesn't take a chance on him. Assuming he falls out of the top 5, I think he's absolutely going before number 10. I don't expect him to make it past number 10. In terms of a long-term fit with the Blackhawks, ultimately it just kind of comes down to, I've talked about this time and time again, it just ultimately comes down to what the Blackhawks want out of a right-handed defenseman. If they were to take one at number 2 or at number 20 as well, do they want someone who's a little bit bigger and provides reliable defensive play and there's more upside in that area, or do they want to target someone like a Zayne Parekh who has a ton of offensive upside? I think he absolutely has the highest upside of any defender in this year's class. There's no doubt about that. But I think his floor is undoubtedly lower than Artem Levshinov's as well. And personally, I think the Blackhawks would like someone a little bit more reliable on their right-hand side. They have Seth Jones signed on long-term, Kevin Korchinski, an offensive-minded defenseman. Sam Rinzel, I don't know if he's going to be a power play quarterback ever, even with those two guys in the system already, but I think he could be a capable puck mover with some size on the right-hand side. Because of that, I don't know. I personally would think that the Blackhawks would lead towards someone with Levshinov's skill set, but I don't know. Undoubtedly, though, if the Hawks were to pick Perekh, it would give them unbelievable offensive abilities on their blue line. Like I said, Seth Jones, Kevin Korchinski, Rinzel, plus you got Vlasic and Ethan Del Mastro as kind of the physical big body defensemen. Those could be guys that could work really well along with Zayne Parekh. So there absolutely is luster around Zayne Parekh joining the Blackhawks. But in my opinion, I just think number 2 is a little bit too high for him to go. If he does wind up falling out of the top 10, yeah, I would be curious and possibly trading up for Zayne Parekh. But if I'm being honest here, I think I'd rather trade up and go and get Cole Yzerman if he were to fall out of the top 10. I don't know. I just think there are reasons to be concerned there about Zayne Parekh's game with the Blackhawks taking him at number 2 and also the needs on the right-hand side for their blue line. I don't know. There's just a little bit for me to be desired out of Zayne Parekh's game, but he is an offensive dynamo. Like I said, the most runway, I think, out of any defenseman in this year's draft, and that's including Zeev Buium, just because I think Parekh's goal-scoring abilities, I think there's a lot of runway there if he's to work out to his true upside. I just think there are some things that could hold him back from reaching that possibly. But regardless what ends up happening with Zayne Parekh, it's just going to be fascinating to see what happens with all of these defensemen projected to go in the top 10, top 15 of this year's draft class. I don't think Zayne Parekh is a perfect fit for the Blackhawks. I don't think he winds up going at number 2, but I'm really curious to hear what all you have to say about that assessment that I just had. Do you agree with that? And if not, go and let me know. If you do, let me know as well. And just your all-in-all thoughts about Zayne Parekh's game in this year's draft class. But there is his 2024 NHL Draft Profile. Coming up in just a moment here, Hawks fans, I'll be getting into Lukas Reichel's 2023-2024 report card. But first, I got to talk to you all. That is wrong. about the fine folks over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. Baseball is also in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. And if you're a new customer, make sure to go and join FanDuel right now, because when you do, you'll get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. Yes, you heard me right. $150 worth of bonus bets, win or lose. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from slap shots throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs to home runs across all the great ballparks, and even slam dunks en route to the NBA championship, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Go and make your first bet an automatic win by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed if you're a new member. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 2, we had yet another draft profile for segment 1. For segment 2, we're going to have yet another report card, just like Wednesday's show. I've already gone over numerous Blackhawks players: Connor Bedard, Philip Kurashev, Seth Jones, Kevin Korchinski, Nick Foligno, Peter Mrazek. If you're interested, if you missed any of those shows, I also have a playlist for that on the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel under 2023-2024 report cards. Everything is time-coded there as well. And oh yeah, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Today, though, going to be getting into 22-year-old Lukas Reichel's report card, who actually, he turns 22 here today and had a big game for Germany in their win in the IIHF World Championship. Did go and join on with that team after the Rockford Ice Hogs got knocked out of the Calder Cup playoffs. Went and scored 2 goals today, though. Have yourself quite a 22nd birthday there, Lucas. 2s are wild for Lukas Reichel. I just realized, excuse me. But to tell the Lukas Reichel story about this season, I think I got to start all the way back in training camp. He's coming off of a rather successful final stint in the NHL with the Blackhawks towards the end of the 2022-2023 campaign. Came up from Rockford, and for the first time at the NHL level, really looked like he belonged, really looked like he could be an impact player, and showed the upside that we have been waiting to see for years and years and years. It finally clicked for Reichel, I think, in a 11-game sample, maybe 17-game sample size, I think it was, towards the end of the season. He was fabulous along with Andreas Athanasiou and Philip Kurashev. And then going into training camp this year, he had a big-time summer, came in and looked great. I mean, looked like he was ready to be a big-time contributor for the Chicago Blackhawks. So much so, I've talked about this numerous times on the show. Feel free to have a laugh at my expense. I don't care about it. On my Blackhawks bold predictions leading into the season, I had Lukas Reichel as their leading point scorer. That's how good he looked during training camp. I mean, he was dazzling out there. The speed, the transition ability, the play. It looked like it was all coming together. And I was licking my chops, being like, yes, Lukas Reichel's ready to be a dog. And then that just never happened. It just never happened. The start of the season didn't go terribly for Lukas Reichel. It wasn't, though, maybe as electric as I had hoped it would be. He was the Blackhawks' second-line center to open up the year, and he just never really got anything going. He never was a consistent point producer, was never making consistent impacts, wasn't noticeable on a night-to-night basis. And then Andreas Athanasiou gets hurt, a guy that he had a lot of success with, as I mentioned, towards the end of last season. Philip Kurashev gets bumped up to Connor Bedard's line with Taylor Hall out. He starts thriving there. And it left Lukas Reichel in this really weird situation. And his struggles got so bad, his lack of production got so bad, that he found himself in a bottom 6 role for a pretty good chunk of time and was playing with guys like, Mackenzie Entwistle, Reese Johnson, Taylor Radish, who was having his own struggles. Just players that I think didn't necessarily mesh well with Reichel's style, the type of game that he wants to play, and more specifically, the pace that he wants to play at, the offensive-minded game through the neutral zone, entering the offensive zone with some speed. It felt like that all got stripped away from him, which to be fair, I will say Lukas Reichel didn't really do himself any favors with the coaching staff. Luke Richardson, I made a lot of arguments that, listen, I know Reichel is struggling, but I think you got to get him back up in the top six. I know he's not helping himself out. You got to get him there, though, because these guys, they're just not going to work with him. Well, that went on for probably too long, in my opinion, and then Reichel ends up getting sent back down to Rockford, and it's like, we had just taken a major step back this season with a guy who I thought was going to be making a big-time impact for this Blackhawks team, a guy who I thought could have potted 55, 60 points. I really thought he had that capabilities this season with the momentum that he was entering the year with. Fortunately, though, Reichel kind of salvaged his season late after coming back up from Rockford, and I think most notably just not being discouraged by going back to a place where he probably thought he had closed that chapter of his career. Didn't even really have the best stint there, a lot of assists. I personally would have liked to see some more goal scoring, but he came back up like he did the year prior and finished the season on a really good note. I think that probably salvaged Reichel a little bit in my mind, and I think in a lot of Blackhawks fans' minds as well, but undoubtedly when you get into the numbers, it was disappointing all across the board for Lukas Reichel. 65 games in the NHL this season. That's the most he's ever had in the NHL by over 40 games, but the production was abysmal. Only 5 goals, which is 2 fewer than he had in 23 games the year before. He had 7 goals in 23 games the year before, only had 5 in 65 this year, which was 10th on the Blackhawks. Added 11 assists in 65 games. He had 8 in 23 games the year before. So certainly not the progression we were hoping for in that area. And that totaled only 16 points when he had 15 in 23 games the year prior. Those 16 points also were good for 9th on the Blackhawks. No bueno there out of Reichel. Minus 29 plus minus rating as well. I think that can also just be attributed to the lack of offensive production that he was having at even strength all year long and kind of the shoddy ghost performances that he was mixing in. And out of his 5 goals, I think this is more discouraging than anything. 2 of those 5 goals Reichel scored on the power play. Those were his first PPGs that he ever scored, but that meant that he only scored 3 goals in 65 games at even strength. A really tough look for Lukas Reichel considering all 7 of his goals, obviously, with these being his first power play goals this season, all 7 the season before in those 23 games all came from the even strength variety. Those 3 even strength goals were 13th on the team, fewer than Boris Kachuk had in 38 games, fewer than Joey Anderson had, fewer than Mackenzie Entwistle had, and also fewer than Colin Blackwell had in 44 games. So bad numbers across the board for Reichel here. Only shot 6% when he shot 16.7% the year prior. I didn't expect him to go and shoot 15, 16% again, but I thought the confidence was certainly growing in the goal scoring department, and he was really finally starting to flourish a little bit and trust in his shot. That went absent again this season. Also only won 43.4% of his faceoffs when he took nearly 200 draws, so I think it was pretty apparent that he's not a center iceman. One thing I will say that was good about Reichel is he had 33 takeaways to 35 giveaways. When watching him, I assumed he was going to have many more giveaways than he did takeaways, but there were some positive things about his defensive game when he was engaged. It wasn't on a nightly basis, but especially in the last, couple of weeks of the season there, I thought he was certainly more engaged defensively and flashed that upside again that we saw late last year when he was turning defense into offense pretty frequently. The analytics, not good for Lukas Reichel. 43.9 Corsi for percentage, was on the ice for only 23 goals for in 65 games to 50 against at 5-on-5. It was just a tough year all across the board for Lukas Reichel. And when breaking down the good and bad here, there's just not a lot of good. I would say at least flash that upside once again at the end of the year like he did the season prior. And I do still believe in Lukas Reichel's transition abilities, the speed that he has, the playmaking, the way that he recognizes the game. Even the shooting, I don't think he's ever going to be like a consistent 25 goal scorer, but I think he's someone who could hit that 20 goal plateau. I still believe in his offensive makeup, and I think he plays a game that the Hawks want to continue to play year in year. They want to play fast. They want to play aggressive through the neutral zone into the offensive zone and play with speed. Like, we can see it by the guys Kyle Davidson has drafted, and Lukas Reichel meshes well with that. And also, from time to time, I think he did have some good back checks. did a good job of stripping opponents and turning defense into offense, going the other way with speed. And also, he didn't get discouraged by going back down to Rockford. At least came back up and had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder there. But as far as the bad, yeah, not very good. A lot here. Didn't take the leap, I think, is the biggest thing, like everyone had hoped for. And, he really looked like he was ready and capable of doing that, like I mentioned, during training camp. The playmaking just wasn't there for Reichel. There were far too many ghost performances in the first 40, 45, 50 games of the year. I didn't like to see the goal scoring take a dip. I really thought that was something he was going to build off of last year, and just didn't seem as confident in his game basically through the first 50, 55 games that he played this year, and didn't do a whole lot of anything like we know that he's capable of. And I do think some of that was how he was used in part of that stretch. But like I said, he also didn't do himself any favors, and those ghost performances aren't going to rub the coaching staff very well. So he definitely needs to work on his consistency. He definitely needs to have a better start than he did last year. And it almost kind of feels like, reminds me of what Philip Kurashev went through these last couple of years. We see flashes, we see the offensive upside, we see the speed. I think Reichel obviously has the higher ceiling of the two, but they just both weren't able to really put it together. Kurashev finally did this past season. Hopefully Lukas Reichel will be able to do the same. I do still believe in his offensive abilities, but as a 22-year-old now, I don't want to say that it's time, but the clock is starting to tick here. It's really important for Lukas Reichel to go and have this big-time season. He got the contract extension out of the way, a 2-year deal to give him a little bit of security. Hopefully it gives him that confidence and that trust that, hey, this organization still believes in you. Let's go put in the work. Let's go do what we're capable of doing. We all know you have it. We just got to see it. So as far as a grade, I'm going to give Lukas Reichel a C- for his performance this season. Most of the votes, I think 48% of them, were for a D/F, which I can't really blame Blackhawks fans for. I'm probably being a little bit generous, if I'm being honest, by giving him a C-. It's really only due to the late surge that he had in those final 5 or 6 games or whatever. But other than that, really disappointing season out of Lukas Reichel. No other way to put it. If you don't already follow me on X, make sure to go and follow, not at Jack Bushman, my strictly Blackhawks account, at Talkin' Hockey. That way you can vote on all of the polls when I drop them on X. If you missed out on this one, though, make sure to go and let me know what grade you would give young Blackhawks forward Lukas Reichel for his performance this season. But that wraps up Lukas Reichel's 2023-2024 report card. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I tie a bow on this episode, a quick trigger warning, as I do still have to talk about another lawsuit being filed against Danny Wirtz in the Chicago Blackhawks charity. But first, I got to talk to you all about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to the next big event or the next ball game that you want to attend, and I'm happy to announce right here that Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets both faster and easier. Plus, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And I personally have used Game Time since I was back in high school. It's been a long time that I've been using Game Time. When I would go in, watch the Blackhawks in their heyday at the UC, or even watching that championship Cubbies team down at Wrigley Field, and I still use it to this day whenever I travel and maybe I want to go and check out a concert with one of my buddies, maybe go and see a comedy event. I always make sure to check out Game Time first because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase all of your tickets. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app, and when you do, make sure to create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first purchase. Yes, you heard me right. $20 off to go and see Seiya Suzuki, Justin Steele, and the Chicago Cubs down at Wrigley this summer. All you got to do, download Game Time, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, just a quick reminder to hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, before I close things out on the show here today, I do have to be sure to mention, and I would not be doing my job if I didn't reference this on the show, did not want to be someone who was just ignoring this fact, but I do have to give a quick trigger warning to everyone out there, because another lawsuit has been filed against the Chicago Blackhawks. It was announced on Wednesday morning. The lawsuit is actually against the Chicago Blackhawks charity, the Chicago Blackhawks Foundation, and Chairman Danny Wirtz are the ones who the lawsuit is against. And like I said, I definitely have to bring this up or else I wouldn't be doing my job properly. I'm not going to be giving any opinions on the matter whatsoever, because there's nothing really other than the facts to say at this point in time that's going to do me or anyone else any good whatsoever. You're all entitled to your own opinions out there. I know X is obviously a very volatile place, so I've seen a lot of opinions out there already, but just going to be reporting the facts here on today's show, as well as the Blackhawks statement that they filed in response to the lawsuit. And again, just a quick trigger warning to anyone watching or listening before I get into the details. Rick Westhead was the first one to announce this, as from TSN. He's kind of been the one to be the breaker of all of this news on social media in the last couple of years. And he posted that, quote, "A woman who worked for the Chicago Blackhawks is suing the NHL team and its charity, accusing them of breach of contract, fraud, and sexual harassment. The woman said in her lawsuit that she was pushed out after she was hired on to improve the team's relationships within the Native American community. In the lawsuit, the woman said she was sexually harassed in 2022 by a man working with the Blackhawks. The lawsuit accuses him of inappropriate sexual advances, touching her without consent, and also of sending her unwanted sexually explicit videos of him on Snapchat. The lawsuit also said the woman reported 2 other incidents of women being groped at Blackhawks events by men working with the team via CBS News. The Blackhawks, in response to this harassment allegations made by Mrs. Sanders, the name of the accusee, or the accuser, excuse me, quote, "The Chicago Blackhawks have a zero tolerance policy for misconduct and take allegations of harassment in the workplace very seriously. In response to Ms. Sanders' allegations, the organization immediately conducted a thorough investigation with the assistance of outside counsel, including interviews with internal and external parties and review of pertinent materials and digital records. Based on the information available to us, we found insufficient evidence to substantiate her claims. Of note, the person identified by Ms. Sanders in your question are not and have never been independent contractors with nor employees of the Chicago Blackhawks." So obviously a lot here, a lot of lawyer talk going on there as well. First reaction, though, is just not again, man. Just not a good look for the Chicago Blackhawks, obviously, with this news coming out. And I really hope that something like this didn't happen. And if it did, that the Blackhawks did a thorough and deep independent investigation. They brought out outside people to get to the bottom of it. And with everything that's gone down since the Kyle Beach ordeal, I really have felt like the Blackhawks, for the most part, this new leadership group that they have, Kyle Davidson, Jamie Faulkner, Danny Wirtz, have really they know what they've gotten into, and they know they have to strive to be better in these areas and make progressions in the right direction for this Blackhawks organization across many, many, many fronts. And I feel like they've taken that very, very seriously, and they've done a rather good job of that. The one thing I will say, I'm happy that they let Corey Perry go. They terminated his contract. They did an investigation of that. They took that matter seriously. At the same point in time, though, we never really got the findings of that results. We still don't know what Corey Perry did. And I think for Blackhawks fans, that's still in me too. Like, that rubbed me the wrong way. And I think Danny Wirtz is a good man. I think Jamie Faulkner's a good woman. I think Kyle Davidson's a good man. But it's just like the facts kind of have to speak for themselves. You can only say you're a good person, you're trying to make progress and be a good organization. That only counts for so much. It's the actions and how you go about things that really matter. And the jury's still out about this new Blackhawks leadership group, right? Like they have a long way to go to get the trust and prove to people that they are a Class C and well-run organization from top to bottom. This obviously gives that another big hit. So we'll obviously see where this goes from here, but it's hard to trust this Chicago Blackhawks organization. Again, even after I do think they've been making strides, I think all those people are good people who are in charge, but it's just tough to be a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. It's tough to trust this team and trust in this organization. I'm not really going to say anything too much more than that. I just hope the Chicago Blackhawks do the right thing, have good people in this organization, and stop being, the talking point for the wrong reasons in the NHL. I really hope this all gets handled in the right way. The Chicago Blackhawks do everything the right way. That's all I can really ask. All I can really say on this front. Just not something that's fun to talk about, but absolutely something that I have to bring up here on the show, or else I wouldn't be doing my job, and definitely don't want to be looking like someone who doesn't take this kind of stuff seriously, because I absolutely do. And till the Chicago Blackhawks prove themselves better, there's always going to be that stain and that dark cloud over this organization. It's just the God honest truth. So that's all I'm going to say about that today. That's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, if you haven't done so already. And even if you're someone who does just regularly listen to the podcast, do me a huge favor, please. Go and throw me a subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel. It won't cost you anything. It's 100% free and really does help me as I'm trying to grow the show. Please make sure to go and hit that subscribe button. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me, if you're interested, on X at Jack Bushman2. Go and check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey as well, at obviously at Talkin' Hockey, for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until the next episode, everyone, enjoy your weekends. Hopefully some good weather here in the Chicagoland area. Stay safe. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.